You're in the shower. You're not washing. You haven't been washing for about 4 minutes. You're winning an argument against someone who isn't there, using points you'll never actually make, and somehow the fake version of them just said something so unreasonable that now you're genuinely annoyed at a person who is currently 3 miles away eating lunch and thinking about absolutely nothing. And the worst part is, you know this. You know none of it is happening. You know you're standing in hot water getting upset at a character you invented, giving them dialogue you wrote, and then reacting to that dialogue with real emotion. You are the writer, the director, the cast, and the audience of a production no one asked for. And yet, you can't stop. You've never been able to stop. So let's talk about why. Your brain has a network that activates the moment you stop paying attention to what's in front of you. Researchers call it the default mode network. But all you need to know is this. The second you stop doing, your brain starts simulating. It runs scenarios. It rehearses conversations. It projects you into situations that haven't happened and may never happen. And it does this with such cinematic detail that your body genuinely can't tell the difference between what's real and what you just made up in the shower. This isn't a glitch. It's actually one of the most sophisticated things a human brain can do. It's called mental simulation. And from an evolutionary standpoint, it's the reason you're alive. Your ancestors didn't survive by being stronger or faster. They survived by being able to imagine what might happen next and preparing for it before it arrived. The rustle in the grass might be wind. It might be a predator. The brain that could simulate both outcomes and act on the more dangerous one got to reproduce. The brain that waited to find out did not. So congratulations, you inherited the anxious brain. It won. The problem is that the system was never designed for modern life. Your brain can't tell the difference between a lion in the grass and your manager's slightly passive-aggressive email from last Tuesday. So it does what it's built to do. It simulates. What did she mean by, "as per my last email"? Was that a dig? Should you reply casually or match her tone? And now you're 4 scenarios deep, drafting a calm but devastating response in your head that you will absolutely never send. Because by tomorrow, you'll have convinced yourself it was probably fine. Probably. Here's where it gets more personal. A huge number of people who imagine fake scenarios aren't just rehearsing conflict, they're rehearsing connection. You've probably imagined a conversation with someone where you finally say the thing you've been holding back, where you're vulnerable and articulate and brave, and they listen perfectly, and for once everything lands exactly the way you meant it to. Maybe it's a friend you've drifted from. Maybe it's a parent who never quite heard you. Maybe it's someone you never got closure with. You've had that conversation 100 times in your head. It went perfectly every time. And you've never had it once in real life, because real life doesn't come with a script. And without a script, you don't trust yourself to get it right. That's not weakness. That's someone who cares so much about being understood that they'd rather get it right in a simulation than risk getting it wrong in person. The rehearsal isn't avoidance. It's preparation by someone who's been misunderstood before and doesn't want it to happen again. And it's not just the big conversations either. You've probably rehearsed how to order at a restaurant when the waiter seemed rushed. You've scripted a casual, "Oh hey, I didn't see you there," for someone you absolutely saw 40 seconds ago and have been mentally preparing for ever since. You've imagined an entire friendship with someone you sat next to once on a train, built it out across months, gave it an arc, and then watched them get off at their stop and take the whole thing with them. Your brain doesn't just simulate threats. It simulates entire lives. Possible ones, lost ones, ones that never existed outside the 3 inches between your ears. But here's the flip side, and this part is uncomfortable. Sometimes the fake scenarios aren't preparation. They're a replacement. You imagine the confrontation so vividly that your brain gets a small hit of resolution without you ever having to actually confront anything. You imagine telling your friend how their comment hurt you, and you feel the relief of having said it. And then you move on. Except you haven't said it, and they have no idea, and the thing still sits between you, getting heavier every week. The simulation gave you just enough emotional release to avoid the real conversation. It scratched the itch without fixing the rash. And over time, that becomes a pattern. You process things that never actually get processed, resolve things that never actually get resolved, and wonder why nothing in your life feels fully settled, even though you've thought about everything 1,000 times. There's a study that shows this dynamic clearly. Researcher Shelley Taylor found that people who mentally simulated the process of achieving a goal, the steps, the effort, the work, performed significantly better than people who just visualized the outcome. But here's the catch. The people who only imagined the end result, the fantasy of having already succeeded, actually performed worse than people who didn't visualize at all. The brain treated the fantasy as a completed experience. It got the reward without the effort. Motivation dropped. The simulation stole the momentum. That's what happens when you live entire emotional experiences in your head. Your brain checks the box. Confrontation? Had it. Resolved in the shower. Romantic connection? Experienced it. 3 full conversations while driving to work. Grief? Processed it. 40-minute imaginary monologue at 1 a.m. But none of it actually happened. And the gap between what you've experienced internally and what's actually occurred in your life keeps getting wider. And that gap has a feeling. It feels like being stuck, not because you're lazy, because your brain keeps finishing things your life hasn't started yet. Now, before you start feeling guilty about all of this, here's what you need to hear. The ability to simulate scenarios at this level of detail is not a common trait. Most people don't do this. Most people move through their day reacting to what's in front of them, without running a parallel narrative underneath. The fact that you can construct full conversations with accurate emotional beats, predict how someone would respond based on years of subtle observation, and feel genuine emotion from something entirely imagined, that's an extraordinary level of cognitive and emotional processing. Writers do this. Therapists do this. Anyone whose job requires understanding how humans work at a deeper level does this. You're not broken. You're running a very advanced program. You just don't have great controls over when it launches. And that's the only thing worth changing. Not the imagining itself, just your relationship to it. The next time you catch yourself 6 minutes deep into a fake conversation while staring at a wall, you don't need to stop it. You don't need to feel embarrassed about it. You just need to ask one question. Is this simulation preparing me for something I'm actually going to do? Or is it replacing something I'm avoiding? Because if it's preparing you, let it run. Your brain is doing exactly what it's built for. But if it's replacing, if the shower argument is starting to feel like the real one, if the imaginary conversation is becoming the only version that exists, then the thing you're avoiding is probably the thing you need to do next. Your brain isn't the problem. It never was. It's a simulation engine that's better than almost anyone else's. The only upgrade it needs is someone at the controls, deciding which simulations stay imaginary and which ones deserve to become real. If this felt like someone just narrated the inside of your skull, subscribe. This channel was built for brains that never stop running.